block technique. Try to break it down into 3 phases. Phase 1 is get off. Okay, we try to draw up our blocks and allow our players to understand what the opposing team's pump protection is going to be. And generally speaking, if we can ID a zone side or a man side, we want to adjust their alignments accordingly. If they're on the zone side, we want to be tighter in our gap to make them have a longer distance to go. If we are on the man side, we want to be looser to that man. That way, they have a further distance to go. Okay? On punt protection, I hear a lot of people talk about jets and giants, right? Do I have a giant? Do I have somebody tight on my shoulder or a shade alignment, right? In my opinion, that giant footwork or that tight shade alignment is easier to block. We want to create wider alignments, force teams to use their jet footwork. I think that's when you can create some problems. So identifying the man or zone side within the protection scheme and adjusting our alignments. Next, sprinter stance. I get asked about this all the time. Coach, 3-point stance or 2-point stance? I don't care. Here's the 2 things I care about. 1, we don't take a false step. 2, we have positive shin angles. Some guys are track guys that are comfortable putting their hand on the ground, right? They can get into more of a sprinter stance and they can execute that without taking a false step. It's generally not natural, right? There's no other time you're in a 3-point stance sprinting as an offensive or defensive player, right? Maybe a D lineman, but that's about it. So I do not care 2-point or 3-point. I care the fact that you don't take a false step and you have positive shin angles. I'll give you an example of that in a second. And then, in terms of the final phase, just getting out of our stance, leaping out of it, staying compact and low. Odds are you're going to have some form of block going on in front of you right away. So being compact and low will help. So shin angles, right? And this is what I mean by positive shin angles in the direction that you're going, not vertical shin angles straight up and straight down. So we want positive shin angles, not upright shin angles. So in the direction that we're working to, 2-point stance, 3-point stance. Again, whatever our players feel more comfortable doing, I am there to listen. Eventually, there is a conversation about you need to do this, but giving players some leeway and allowing them to take some ownership, in my opinion, always a good idea. Here's how we replicate the get-off phase. We start them under a shoot to first and foremost replicate that compact, low alignment, and then leaping out of the stance, staying compact and low. Okay, really, as we watch these reps, 1 and 2, right? So just so we can discuss these 2 guys. 2, hesitant, hunched over, not accelerating, right? 1, covering ground, jumping out of the blocks, leaping out of his stance, right? This guy's a tight end. This guy's a receiver. He should not be getting to the block point first, but he is because he's leaping out of that stance. Anytime we can get a block rep, we're getting a block rep. Okay, so we're using a crayon here, right? Again, this is a skill that is trained. No other time on the football field is somebody doing this. So as many reps as possible that we can get, we'll talk about this in a second, we want to execute. Okay, another example here, we'll go from the side angle. Love using this. Again, covering ground, watching this first step, right? No false step, watching that back foot, first step over that line. So we love doing this drill on the sideline so we can see if they are false stepping or are they gaining ground with their first step. Great review on film to use that sideline as the measuring point of how much ground are you gaining as we evaluate that. An example of which during the game here, okay, 3-point stance in the A gap, positive shin angles. Again, leaping out of the stance, right? We are getting to and through to the block point right before the ball is getting kicked and able to get vertical. No opportunity to block this punt if we don't have a great get off. Another example of it versus LIU, again in the A gap, 3-point stance. Great get off, no fall step, gaining ground in the first step, and getting himself to the block point. Nothing more than a great get off. Obviously, not great in terms of the protection, but phase one, the get off is key. Doesn't always mean we're going to be successful. Okay, going to pause this one. Everybody's now in 2-point stances, right? Create positive shin angles, no fall steps, right? We are getting to the shield as this guy's still into his footwork. Don't get there, but that's the type of get off we're looking to have. Next conversation, we get off the football. We are working to the block point. How do we want to approach and attack the block point? Here's the number one thing. Accelerate through the block point. Do not jump vertically. So do not slow down. Do not jump straight up, straight down. If you ever jump, it must be horizontally through the block point, not vertically at the block point. Two completely different things. The vertical jump, where you slow down and jump straight up, straight down, will lead to roughing the punter calls. If you accelerate through the block point, and if you leave your feet and you get horizontal through the block point, you will work across the face of the punter. And if you do it right, should not be a problem. Hand placement, number one thing, overlap our hands, right? The worst thing you do or you see is somebody gets to the block point, their hands are separated and extended out wide, and the punt goes directly through their hands. Last thing, and maybe the most important, right? We want to lock out our arms, overlap our fingers, and then get big eyes. We want to bug your eyes at the block point. Natural instinct is to close your eyes. We want to bug our eyes. A lot of the times when we talk about this moment, the block point, I love coaching in the negative. Okay, so what does that mean? Hey guys, if you do not want to block a punt, then close your eyes, separate your hands, and just jump straight up, straight down. I guarantee you never block a punt. But if you extend your arms out, overlap your hands, get big eyes, and accelerate through the block punt, now we got a shot. Now we've got an opportunity to win at the block point. Very simple in that mindset. Great look at it here. This is Malik Fisher. He was with the Saints for a cup of coffee. He's now with the XFL Defenders, right? Overlapped hands, elbows are locked out, right? Trying to see through his eyes to get himself to the block point. We do it first and foremost as a really low impact drill. Okay, great opportunity for us to replicate that moment or that skill as a low impact, high rep, high volume drill. So for these players, right, what we're looking is locked out elbows, overlapped hands, big eyes at the block point. Another example of it here. Okay, I'm coaching our drills, right, or I'm coaching our coaches to move their foot. Don't keep it in the same place. Make them adjust their hands to where the block point is going to be, right? Don't be stagnant in everything. Make them work, right? But that's the picture we want to try to coach. Okay, here's an example of us doing that. We'll talk about how we attack protections, this being one of them. But, you know, never a better example than right here. Don't jump. Accelerate through the block point. If this guy jumps straight up, straight down, closes his eyes, and separates his hand, the ball's getting punted and we're running into the kicker, right? As you watch this from the tight, you'll notice he's going to accelerate through the block point. He's overlapped his hands, right? He's got eyes right on that block point. This is a great visual for how we want to finish when we get there. Takes a great deal of confidence, takes a great deal of trust, and a take it, make it mindset. Another way that we replicate this is through the shield, right? Not often does that last scenario happen where you're able to run straight through to the block point and have to execute. Usually there's some form of contact. So replicating our guys, getting to the shield, reducing our surface area, accelerating through, again, getting a rep of getting to the block point, and then, again, +1, executing a little bit of a scoop and score. We'll work either side of that drill, and then the next phase we're going to work is getting vertical through the middle of the shield, getting skinny. I've said that term a couple times in both presentations, reducing our surface area, right? Trying to make ourselves skinny, extending our near hand or both hand based upon our path to the punter, taking the ball off of his foot. Okay, an example of it here, again, trying to reduce our surface area, extend an arm out or two hands based upon your path to the punter, and then scooping and scoring on the finish.